Hello and welcome to Mondays with Maria Gould. Today is episode 50 and it is already February 23rd, 2026. And I am joined today by Shawna Robinson. Hi, Shawna. Hello. And we are going to talk about a very exciting topic today, and that is the world of the fairies. So I'd like to introduce Shawna a little bit more. She has spent her whole life noticing the magic of Creator in all things. She is an internationally award-winning author in read aloud stories for kids, a certified theta healer practitioner, a former homeschooling mom, a perpetual student, as we all are, and she loves helping children and adults learn about magical beings and nature spirits, as well as finding ways to connect with their own energy. So I'll give you her connection and her email and how to reach out to Shawna if you really resonate with her and would like to work with her. She does theta healing sessions, and we'll also talk about, now you are quite an accomplished woman. I'm just going to skim through this, so correct me or add to it if you would like. So you are an award-winning, you have an award-winning story of collection of stories that are read out loud to children. These can be found on Audible, but also directly through you. Is that correct? Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. And you also have, so you mentioned on Audible, you also have 12 kids meditations called Little Journeys that help children experience the gifts of meditation in a really fun and beautiful way. You would love our Building Your Intuition class for Theta Healing. That's what it's all about. And you've just completed your 6-week animal communication certificate. Any other things you want to chat about on your journey?
You know what? I just think that the thread through all of it has just been the curiosity and making sense of the world around me. And my orientation to the world has always been through nature, through animals, through a sense of wonder and curiosity. And I think that's where the world of nature spirits and fairies particularly really resonate with me. We operate at that same energetic level.
Yes, I think the two virtues that you mentioned were curiosity and wonder. Those are amazing, innocent virtues that a lot of children have as well. I'm not saying you're a child, but when you kept that wonder and curiosity, that is probably why fairies can talk to you so easily. So that's cool. So when was your very first experience with fairies? Did you ever not remember having one?
I don't know if I not remember having one. That's a good question. But I think the first one that I very much so remember would have been, early elementary school, kindergarten, grade 1. And in the summer, my brother and I would set up a tent in our backyard. And there were many days where I would just be in the tent by myself with my books. And there was always someone to talk to. And I always, sometimes I was a little embarrassed to come home or a little nervous to come back into the house and share my experiences. But there were always little beings out there with me, asking me what I was reading, curious about what I was doing, or sometimes I would just color or draw. And when I was younger, they would often present very much like little winged beings, oftentimes little orbs of light. And as I've gotten older, maybe the way that they present to me has changed somewhat. Maybe I don't have the same amount of visual acuity as I did when I was a child, but there's still that knowing and that real pure energetic thread of joy and wonder and curiosity. And that is sort of overwhelming sensation for me when I know that I'm connecting with fairies.
Oh, wonderful.
I remember being a little bit older and staying at a cabin in BC, and my brother and I would take the wooded path down to the beach. My parents would drive, and he would usually run ahead to beat the car. And I would go a little bit more slowly to appreciate what was around me. And at that point, the experience was very much like a scene from a Disney movie that took place in Scotland, where she sees these little orbs of light called the will-o'-the-wisps that kind of lead her down the path.
Ah, okay.
Very much my experience that there would be these lights that would guide me down the path. And, there were all kinds of bears out in the summer, and I never worried because I always felt like I had this little guiding light to keep me safe. And I think that's something that I have received many blessings from the fairies over the years. And that sensation of safety and guidance has always been one of them.
Yes, absolutely. Now, do you find that the fairies are very connected to nature?
Absolutely. I think that that's probably their main role. If we think of the way that we look at sort of understanding fairies in the bigger context of magical creatures, all fairies are nature spirits, but not all nature spirits are fairies. So they have a role and a function within our living physical world. Each of them have their own magic. Each of them have their own gifts. Not all of them look like Tinkerbell.
Yes. Yes.
They can be bigger or smaller or with wings or without wings. And those physical attributes and characteristics then connect to the purpose of the job that they have. Are they responsible for animals? Are they responsible for plants? Are they responsible to support the changing of seasons and the weather? So the way that they present themselves is also a really unique aspect of fairies. I think people often have a very one-track view of what they are and how they should look and be.
Yes.
And in my experience, that's definitely not true.
No. And I think that's probably where our movies and our literature can really paint a picture of what fairies are like. And what do you find with literatures that they get right, and what do you find they maybe miss the mark?
Well, I think one of the things that's really popular today is looking at like fantasy literature, right? In fantasy literature, which I do enjoy reading, we've got the high fae and we have the lesser fae. And we've got the high fae with these magical gifts and they're more human-like, and the lesser fae as being slaves. And when connecting with my fairy friends, they wanted to make it very clear that there is no hierarchy, right? This is not a master-servant type of relationship. All the fae have their own unique role. And they offered to think of it more like a herd of animals. Yes, there is a leader, right? If you look at a herd of horses, there is a herd leader. Every single other horse in that herd has a function, right? Even those that are maybe lower in the herd, to notice things and to alert and share messages. And the fairies want it to be very clear that they don't have this sort of I'm higher or lesser or greater or less important or a servant. They all have a function, and I think that is more about a reflection of order. Nature operates in a perfect order and a perfect balance, and in order for that to happen, everyone has to fill in their role. Yes. And I think that's how the fairies all work together, is they each have a role and a purpose and a function.
Yeah,
and that's more important than the other.
Absolutely, just as humans do. Maybe they don't understand their bigger purpose because they're usually already living it, so it's hard for them to see.
It's very true. It's very true.
So you were saying the hierarchy in movies or books are false, which totally I would agree with my experiences. Do they get some things right in movies, or was there any movies about fairies, even our cartoon type or Disney type movies, are any of those sort of correct?
Well, I think, if we look at the most well-known fairy portrayed would be Tinkerbell.
Yes.
I think she represents the stereotypical image of a fairy, that she has wings, that she's maybe a little mischievous.
Yeah.
That she maybe pokes a bit of trouble at things, and that she's fascinated with humans. I think there is those attributes of Tinkerbell, I think, feel very correct for some fairies, not all, but
Yeah.
for some.
Yeah.
And I think if we look at some of the books, what am I thinking? What would I suggest for a book? If you're into reading any of the Sarah J. Maas, for example, which is a huge world of fantasy, she likens her fairies to humans, right? And she makes them very human. I think when we look at maybe the Fairy Queen, or we look at Shakespeare and some of the ways that he's portrayed fairies, they are a little bit more human. And again, that represents this huge range of what fae can be.
Yes. Yes.
So I think there's always a bit of truth in a lot of those characters.
Yes. Yeah.
It's off of the truth.
Yeah.
But the fairies made it very clear, don't hold too tightly to that. Because again, that's one person's experience or one person's reflection of their knowledge of what a fairy is.
Yes.
And that it's too hard to sum them all up.
Yes, exactly. Just like people, right? Just like people.
Yeah.
We can't put everybody in the same box, right? So, curiosity about developing relationships with fairies. Now, you had those virtues naturally of curiosity and wonder. So, would you say that's an important thing?
I think that's an important thing. I think we need to start to understand how to cultivate a relationship with fairies by understanding why the relationship between humans and fairies has been strained.
Okay,
I think
good.
that might be the starting place.
Perfect. Let's go there.
Because years and years and millennia ago, there were fairy accords that were made. These were agreements between humans and fae on how they would work together and live together harmoniously to care for and support the earth. And I don't think we have to stretch our imaginations too far to realize that the humans broke those accords.
Yeah, we became very unconscious about our connection
Very
with
much
nature.
so.
Yes.
Very much so. So when we hear stories of, trickster fairies deceiving humans, reading stories where humans disappear off into fae and come back years later and they've lost their mind, right? There are fairies out there who are still very angry, whose purpose then has become to seek, not revenge, but to say, you didn't honor these agreements, therefore I will not. And they have a different orientation towards humans. So I think if we want to cultivate a relationship with fairies, the very first step is to understand compassion and to recognize from their point of view that this precious earth, this beautiful place that they have been entrusted with to help all of nature grow and bloom and blossom and be magical for us to enjoy, we're getting in the way of their purpose. So that there's frustration there, for sure. So if we can, in our human mind, step back, see it from a different point of view, and just even begin to understand how they might feel, I think that's a great first step. And if that's too much of a stretch, another thing that we can do is just simply notice nature around us.
Yes.
Take the time to notice the changing of the seasons, when things bloom and grow, how they grow, the animals around us, and how they interact. There is a divine aspect to that. And to a certain extent, the fairies allocate some of that divinity. They help it move in the places where it needs to go. So when we notice that, essentially we are noticing and honoring the fairies. Right? Another thing we can do is make offerings. In our house, we have a table filled with plants, and it's always been I call it our little fairy altar.
Yeah.
And it's not something that we do all the time, but especially when my daughters were quite young, they liked sweet things. And so if we went to the farmer's market and got some really nice honey, I would always take a little tablespoon of honey out, put it in a little glass jar, and make an offering to the fairies. Sometimes they like dried fruit. Sometimes my daughters put out marshmallows for them, and it's not like they eat it, right? It's not like you wake up in the morning and the marshmallows and the honey will be gone. I mean, if you have a dog, it might. But
Yes.
it's not like they eat it. But the intention of that offering, they will honor and receive that wholeheartedly. Also, if you're out on a walk and you notice something really beautiful, Sometimes for me, it's leaves. Especially when we go out to BC, there's a maple tree, and if there's a beautiful maple leaf that's fallen, that's gorgeous, it's already down on the ground, I will pick it up and I will place it on a special stone that I have to offer to the nature spirits and fairies when we go out to BC. So those simple little acts, I think, are beautiful. Another thing you can do is put crystals in your flower beds, or a little crystal in your flower pot. Simple act, just try one. Put it in a flower with the intention that it's an offering to the fae in your house, and see what happens.
Yes.
You know, and saying thank you. There's nothing wrong with saying thank you. If those acts don't feel comfortable, even just noticing a beautiful flower or a perfect ice crystal of snow and saying thank you can go an awfully long way to beginning to develop that connection.
Connection, right? And honoring them and what they're doing, right? For our nature. Vienna talks a lot about those things as well, adding crystals around your garden for different things, offerings, milk, honey. If you are outside, you might actually see that bees and stuff come around, and which are all, I find the insects are almost interwoven with the Fae kingdom, right? Sometimes I swear I see on hummingbirds or dragonflies little Fae on the back. I swear.
I have an interesting story about some ants that I actually connected with my Fae in my yard about.
Yeah.
So we have very clear boundaries for the nature spirits and fairies on our property. Basically, no shenanigans allowed.
Okay.
So if you are mischievous, if you are going to cause harm to a living thing, you are not welcome at our property. And so we have free will. They can come and go as they please, but it must cause no harm.
Yes.
That is our nature.
Perfect.
And so we built a patio and had a red ant colony move in. And it was to the point where if we were out there in bare feet, the ants would nip at our feet, our dog would lie down, they would bite his tummy. And, you know, one of the really important things about honoring the fairies is to have an organic garden, right?
Yeah.
So we don't use pesticides, we don't use any kind of herbicides. And I didn't want to put down ant traps. I didn't want to do some of the, you know, other horrific ways of boiling water or borax or things like that. Like, I didn't want to do that. And so I went into meditation and I asked for the diva of our yard. So a diva is a fairy who is maybe of a higher order, meaning responsible for more things, kind of like overseeing the balance and the order of all of the things that play out in our And I connected with her and I asked, you know, would it be possible to ask the ants to move? I don't want to harm them, but this is a people space. This is not an ant space. And I feel like this is not a harmonious relationship. And so she facilitated a conversation with me with some of the ants. And it took a few days and we got to the queen and I had a conversation and I presented the case. This is not working for us. I don't want to cause you harm. But visually, I presented 3 other places where they could possibly go in our yard. And I said, please, you have 2 weeks. Otherwise, I may have to resort to other means, but I'd like to have you have the time to move the colony. And within 10 days, there were no more red ants in our yard.
Wonderful. That's wonderful. So look at those developing relationships for international treaties. I love it.
I think, you hear a lot of stories about people getting into agreements with fairies and asking for things. And, you know, the other thing that the fairies in our world wanted us to make very clear is that this is not transactional. Like, a relationship with fairies isn't transactional. You don't just ask for things. Yeah. Right? And I think that we forget we wouldn't really do that in our human relationships.
Yeah, exactly.
We want to get to know, you want to establish a relationship. So over time, the relationship that we had established created the opening for that conversation to happen for an outcome that's suitable for both of us. So that gets back to that awareness and respect that the fairies believe is so important. And I think humans little human efforts can go a very long way to resolving some of the hurts from breaking those area cords.
Okay, good to know. Good to know. Now, what were some of the earliest experiences that you had with fairies? You said there was one with your dog. Too.
Yes, this was very interesting. So, several summers ago, we had a very abundant raspberry crop. And we have our raspberries in garden boxes up against our house, and they were overflowing.
Yeah.
The berries were just spilling over. And there were so many, we have no problem if he wants to go nibble a few berries. Like, no problem. He's a standard poodle. He's got a good nose. He can go in there, kind of grab them. Sometimes he gets a little excited and he gets a little bit rough, right? So maybe we lose a little branch here or there, or the odd leaf. Right?
Yeah.
My daughter and I were having tea out there, and he was going for some raspberries, as he normally does. And then all of a sudden, he jumped up. He put his front paws into the box, and he starts woofing and growling inside the raspberries. And my daughter goes, he's going after a fairy. And I'm like, he would never. Like, our dog has a very harmonious relationship with the house fairy that actually sleeps with him every night.
Okay.
So I'm like, he would not. He would not. And sure enough, there's this growling and this tussle that kind of happens in the bushes. We pull him back, and we finish our tea. We go in the house, and we were sitting down, and all of it, and the dog, he comes right up and he sits down on my lap, and all of a sudden my head starts to hurt. Like, pounding headache. And then I ask, is this mine? Clearly it was not mine. And then he looks up at me, and his whole field had been cracked open. So I went up to the light and I said, Creator, can you show me what happened? And so sure enough, there was a fairy who was responsible for the raspberries, who did not approve of Ray breaking a few branches to go for those berries, and thumped him repeatedly over the head. And Ray was telling him that he didn't like this. So anyway, so then healed up Ray, and I went back outside and I had a conversation with the fairy, and I said, you know, he meant no harm. There's more than enough berries. Yes, you might think that he's a little bit rough, but this is not okay. You cannot cause harm. And so he was put on notice.
Okay.
He was put on notice.
Yeah.
We've had one other time where we put a fairy on notice. I think you know this story, Maria. I was in a theta training class, and we're connecting with a plant, and it just so happened that the plant that I chose was actually a portal that one of my house fairies was guarding, and fought me away energetically to even look at this plant.
Yeah.
And the next morning when I came down, that fairy hissed at me and cursed at me. My husband even heard it, and that fairy also got put on notice.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we are happy to have them in our house, but I mean, within reason.
Yeah. Be respectful. Be respectful. It's all about that mutual respect. So the portals that you mentioned, that's very cool, isn't it? So fairies come into our reality through the portals.
Yeah. I've had some portal experiences as well, transplanting plants from my dad's garden. He has some very established perennials that he gave me, and that opened up portals to some of the fairies I had connected with from my childhood, which was really cool. I had some familiar faces come by that I could connect with, and then they got to meet my daughter in our yard. And then some of the plants that I've taken from my garden, I transplanted out to a ranch where we ride horses at, which has then created yet another opening, like a little superhighway, I guess.
Yes.
Move through different locations and have different experiences.
Yeah, very cool. Because I have a lot of perennials, so I always share them with friends, right? Because they become so huge sometimes. And so that's very cool to know. Opening up, sharing those plants helps to share the portals and those fairies that are responsible for them.
And it just gives them more opportunity to fulfill their purpose. It gives them an expansion of opportunity that wouldn't happen otherwise.
Yeah. And fairies are very good at bending light, right? That's why they may appear sometimes, you know, in a certain shape or form, but you go to look because you'll see them out of the corner of your eye, and boof, right? It's gone. Yeah.
We have a few house fairies that have been with me probably since I moved out in my 20s. And wherever I went, I just invited them to come with me. If they wanted to hop in, you're welcome to come. And I have a couple that have been with me for a couple of decades. And they are the quintessential house fairy where if you put something in an inappropriate place and you go back for it, like I take my earrings off, leave them in the wrong place, one of the earrings is gone.
Right.
The next morning, as a reminder that you didn't put it in the right place, but yet the other earring will eventually show up. Like, don't leave your stuff lying around. Like, take care of everything.
Take care of
I have
everything.
at least one fairy in our house that does that with all of us. My girls always.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
I think that will come back the next day.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Yes, I've heard that about fairies, and those can be some of those boundaries that you have if you invite fairies into your world, that because they do like shiny objects, right? I had a friend that she had completed a Reiki certification with me, and there was a gold seal on her certificate, and a fairy took that and hid it on her because she placed it somewhere, and every time she requested it back, the fairy would laugh and just say no. Yeah, so having some of those boundaries can be helpful to live in harmony as well. Placing
another
those in.
boundary that I have for the fairies and the nature spirits in our yard is I said if you need help, if you need assistance, let me know. But there's only one way that you can let me know, which is a tap on my head.
Okay.
So I have a very specific sensation in my field that I have requested, so that I know immediately that it's them. So that I know immediately I need to check my property. I know immediately that I need to maybe call in Pan for help, right? Who is the king of the elemental kingdom, right? And so when I get that very distinctive little tap on my head, I know that I need to check in and see. And sometimes it's maybe an entity from a neighbor's yard that has thrown something in the yard, or an animal that has dug something up that they're unhappy about. Some things I can help with, some things maybe I can't, but I always honor that request, and I always do my very best to seek assistance whatever way I can, whether it's, like I said, Creator or Pan, or just going to turn over the dirt, right?
Absolutely. So now you spoke earlier about creating a nice environment. What would you do in your yard? So you talked about your altar in the house. And outside you spoke about not using anything that would kill anything. Is there any other tips for outside? Because it would, I have found that if I had an offering kind of place outside and put crystals and invited the fairies if they would like to come, I'll tell you, my garden got huge.
So I have crystals, and we have garden flower beds and garden boxes. All of my garden boxes have crystals in them.
Yeah.
And then I love roses. I think they are my most favorite thing. And so I have a small rose garden, and I have specifically asked the fairies to tend to my roses. And one of the many, many blessings that the fairies have provided me is I live in a zone 3, zone 4 climate, and I had a Floribunda rose, which is a zone 7 rose, over winter for 3 winters.
Wow.
That was 100% my fairies. It was the first to bloom and the first to grow.
Wow.
So asking or assigning them a job. Will you look after my flower bed? Whenever I go to plant in the spring, I kind of intuitively sort of set out my seeds, what I think I want, and then I ask for their input. So if you want to cultivate that relationship, seek their input. If I want to do lettuce and carrots and peas and beans, where do you think they might be best?
Yes.
And I invite their feedback. Because then if they feel like they have a little bit of a buy-in, right? They feel like you've invested in them, you can take it from there.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah,
sort of respecting and honoring their insights, right? They know the soil, they know the light, they know where they're maybe best able to put their efforts.
Yeah.
Things that bloom, anything that blooms that would attract a pollinator or ladybugs or butterflies. They love those. They're companions, right?
Yeah,
Those
yeah,
are great companions, and they're beautiful.
they are.
Anytime there is anything beautiful in your yard that you can offer, I think that's honoring the fae.
Okay, okay, good to know. I know if I go out into the forest, we pick huckleberries here in the fall, and I always bring water as offerings to the plants and the fairies and crystals, and I request that they help me find a wonderful patch. So that's been very helpful the last few years. We've lucked out with great huckleberries, so that's a fun thing to do.
Asking for that assistance is important too, even when it comes to harvest time.
Right.
I work with my berries to see what's best available, checking in with the plant as well, all right?
Yes.
And sometimes in the winter, we often pull things up and clean up our gardens.
Yeah.
One of the things I've done for the last probably 4 or 5 years, is I have one garden box that I typically let my mint grow wild in.
Yeah. Yeah.
And use that for them over the winter.
Okay.
So, again, whether or not they physically eat it, we know they don't.
Yeah.
But I think energetically still leaving a beautiful high vibe frequency plant like mint, wild mint, is again another offering throughout the seasons, even in the winter seasons. And I think one way to saying, I know that you're in my yard. I'm so grateful for all the work that you do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And a little something, in the winter when we close up our gardens, I will see the energetic threads or paths left behind of the fairies, tidying things up, putting the plants to sleep, wrapping them in energy to make sure that they are safe and protected over the winter around the roots of the bulbs and the plants.
Yeah.
These threads throughout my whole garden. Usually in the fall, it just sort of has this glow to it.
Yeah.
And all the that they have taken to wrap things up for the season.
Oh, beautiful, beautiful. So, are there any other stories you wanted to share?
I don't know. I think those are kind of some of my favorite stories. If you ever have a chance to travel to the UK, to get into Scotland and Ireland and England,
Yeah.
I was there in my 20s, and I think that was when I had some very profound knowings of my connection to
Yeah.
the faith.
Yeah. Yeah.
Such rich folklore and history, and believing in the good people,
Yes.
And even reading stories is another beautiful way to understand and connect with the fae. The Ballad of Tam Lin is very easily accessible. It's a good one. Just that knowing of wonder and curiosity and magic. When you feel that and you're in nature, you are probably very deeply surrounded and supported by fairies. So
Noticing that. And also playfulness, right? Curiosity, playfulness, laughter, right? Fae don't seem to like heavier energies, right? Heartbreak and things like that can be very heavy for them. So you might feel angels around you, but less of the fairy world. But if you are in a place of creating like paintings or reading fun books or things like that, probably when you were a child, you would read fun books, and that frequency that you would put out would draw them in to be curious, right? So singing, right? If you're outside singing, that invites them in. Joy.
We're out playing with our dog in the backyard. Sometimes they'll hop on his back and ride him around, and then come in.
Yes.
Love that.
Yes, he thinks that's fun. Ours too. Our dogs too. I have a little corgi cross and a little dachshund. So they think that's fun outside in the summer.
Yeah. And so they come in the house and then they keep it going a little strong.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with it, and then we have a little reminder like, quiet time in our house.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Okay, everybody. Okay, settle down. Yeah. How fun. How fun. Well, this has been lovely. So, how do people reach out to you? How do they connect with you?
Easiest way to connect with me is through my email, which you can include in the show notes, but that's
Okay.
slrobinson@shaw.ca.
Okay, we shall. And they can book theta healing sessions with you, exploration calls about learning to communicate with the fairy world, right?
Absolutely.
And then
Yeah.
also, if they're interested, if you have children and you're interested in the read along or read out loud book series, yeah.
They're all 10, or 15-minute stories. And I do connect a lot with the nature spirits and the fairies in my stories. In fact, I wanted to explore one of them that I have in there. I wanted to explore, we know that there are a lot of people out there who don't believe in fairies.
Yeah,
But what if there was a fairy that didn't believe in people?
right, right.
I had to write a story from that point of view to
Yeah,
explore.
yeah.
Figure out what that's really interesting about
That is a
fairies.
good, curious way. Vienna reassures you don't have to believe in fairies to see them.
And I think that's true. I do.
Yeah.
I mean, we had mentioned earlier that, like, sometimes when we're on that spiritual path, we keep thinking that we always go up and higher, and we want to connect with the angels and we want to connect with the ancestors.
Yeah.
But at the healing, when we learn about the planes of existence, we're a third plane human being. Fairies are the second plane,
Yeah.
which is that plane of plants,
Yep.
which is where we experience love, and we experience it physically through our body. So as spiritual seekers, who maybe have a hard time finding that safety and security in our physical body, connecting with the fairies and the elemental beings and the nature spirits can be a really beautiful way to be spiritual and also still be very grounded in our own bodies.
Good advice. Good advice. All right. Any closing comments before we wrap up today?
Just an immense amount of gratitude. The fairies here were so delighted to have an opportunity to connect with people, to let people know that many of them, not all of them, but many of them genuinely want to have relationships with humans,
Wonderful.
continue to do their best to work towards honoring those accords. But that comes with the awareness of people knowing that they're broken in the first place.
That's wonderful to know. Is there any words of wisdom that they have for the listeners?
Move gently, walk softly, and always keep your eyes open.
That's good advice. And your heart open, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining me, and thank you to all of your beautiful Fae community that's all around you. And we will talk soon, Shawna.
Yeah, it's been an honor. Thank you so
It's been
much.
an honor. All right. Have a good one.